What's up, everybody? This is Ricky from Green Valley Tint here. Today I'm going to be taking you through a tutorial of how to do a commercial window from pulling the seals, installing the film, down to putting everything back together from start to finish. Come check it out. When approaching a commercial window, the first thing I'm going to do, especially when I see these type of gaskets, I'm going to get a hook tool. I'm going to pull out the three sides of my gaskets. This will make it to where I can cut right down to the metal edge. And after drying everything out, I can put the rubbers back in and have no gaps around my entire window. And it also is the best way to get a extremely clean install without having to worry about too much. So after the hook tool, after pulling my rubbers out, wet my window, prep and clean it, take out my scraper, and then scrape my window. I start with my top. I always bury my one edge of my scraper. I try to bury it as deep into the edge as I possibly can. Doesn't matter what kind of window it is, commercial, residential. And then I will slice across and I'll go into the corner and then come out of the corner and do that all the way around. Just knock my corners out first, my edges. Those are important areas to make sure that you get dust, debris, anything that's caked in there, get that scraped. And then from there, I'll work my way down to scraping one section at a time, cleaning the window. Take a microfiber, and now I'm going to wipe down my edges. This is just going to ensure any excess dust, debris, most commercial spaces that you're going to go into, if it's a new build, even an old build, you just want to make sure you wipe off the metal just in case your film ever does touch it. You don't drag contamination into your window. Now from here, I'm going to re-wet my window. Now I'm going to squeegee it. Now for me, after I squeegee my window, I don't personally use microfibers. It is from my belief that I think that just with the paper towel, that it's going to get a cleaner wipe on the edge if you're using a brand new paper towel every single time. Like I'll start my top corner here, I'll go across my top, and I'll drag down the side and wipe away. From there, let's get another paper towel and do the exact same thing. Now there are tons of different techniques. This is definitely not a sticking point when it comes to installing. This is my personal preference. It's always worked for me in the past, so I stick to what you know. All right. Now that my window is clean. Now typically with a commercial window, we're going to get exact measurements when we go out and doing our sales process, and we will actually cut these, especially if it's a commercial building that say it has 50, 60 panes. They're all the same size, and you verified everything. What we'll usually do is we'll literally cut this pattern to an exact size on the window itself, to where all our installers have to do is drop, peel the window, peel the tint, stick it to the window, and all we're doing is usually cutting our bottom piece. Now for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use two sides. I'm going to factory my top and factory a side, and then I'm going to cut my one side, and I'll go over how I cut out my corners, especially on deep commercial windows, how you would want to cut out your tint so when you do feed the tint into the corner, you're not creasing the film at all. So when peeling the tint, if you are a one-man show, and most, like this window here is a 30 by 30 inches by 48 inches. So this pattern is big enough for me to say drop roll or drop peel when it comes down to it. If you're solo by yourself, this is usually one of the best techniques to peel a window with it not giving as much exposure time, the glue, to what's in the air, so you can get it onto the window as quick as possible without having to. Some people, what they'll do is they'll bite one corner and they'll just peel the piece down, which is still a viable way too. I just feel that this way you're going to be able to peel it quicker, get it onto the window, and then without least exposure of contamination in the air, because we can control as many aspects as we possibly can when it comes to wiping things off, squeegeeing, but you can't control the air quality, especially if you're in a commercial building or most buildings in general. So I'll start with before wetting my window, because I don't want to wet my window yet because I just squeegeed it. I don't want contamination falling onto my water and then being on my window. So I'm going to wet the inner part of my film. Now this piece right here, this side that I just wet, that has the plastic on it. That is the plastic I will be removing to expose the glue of the film so the film can adhere to the window. So I wet this backside, make sure I have it rolled fairly tight, and then I'm going to peel back my plastic. Before I touch that glue though, I'm going to wet it. You always want to make sure as soon as you expose glue, you start wetting it. You want to get the friction off the film so it doesn't suck anything to the film. You don't want to drag your fingers across the film either. If you can avoid it, avoid it. So as soon as I have it peeled, I'm wetting the glue side of my film. While I take the plastic right here and fold it onto, or let it stick to the film on the other side. So effectively, when this rolls out, it is peeling the film for me and putting the plastic on the back side. That is something that usually when we make any kind of video, people are like, oh, I thought the plastic was on the inside. The plastic is on the inside, but with this process of peeling film, it's going to transfer or unroll it in a way to where it transfers the plastic to the backside while peeling my film for me. So I'm gonna wet my top edge, get it nice and wet. You wanna soak your film. Don't try to use the exact amount of water. There will be times in certain installs where you'll have to do that, but water is your friend. It is going to allow you to have a cleaner install, allow the film to move around when you need it to before you get it tacked up, but water is your friend. So I'm gonna wet my top edge of my film, and now I'm gonna wet my window. I'm gonna avoid wetting above about like right there. Yes, there's some mist up there, but that's about it. I'm gonna spray from there down. Get the window nice and wet. I do not spray up here because if you hit your top edge with water, what could potentially happen, depending on how much dust is up in that seal or anything of that nature, it'll leak down into your window and then you'll have contamination across the top side of your window. So, all right, so now that my film is already, the plastic is already pre-pilled and put onto the back of the film itself, now when I snap my film down, it's going to take the plastic off the inside and peel my window for me, and I'll be able to go directly to the window without having it like if just hanging out in the open when it comes down to it. All right, so like I said, with this one, I'm going to factory my top edge, which if you don't have a film handler, I highly suggest getting one, because then you can have a factory edge on every single window that you tint. The main reason why I always want a factory edge up top is because then I can seal my top and I can avoid contamination by making sure I squeegee it out. So let's forget, add some water. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna squeegee the top edge into each corner. I do not push upward for the sole reason why I do not wet the top of my window when I'm going to put my film on there. It is so, if you push the water up, the water's got to come down somewhere. So say if there is some dust or some contamination at the top middle of your window, and now you just drove a bunch of water up into it, where do you think it's going to go? It only has one spot to go. It's going to go out and possibly down into your window, depending on how fast you seal the top of your window. So my go-to always is I will seal the top of my window. That's the first thing I'm doing. After I seal the top of my window, I'm taking my paper towels. I'm going to fold one over nice and tight. And then I'm going to put it on either, I like using these blue squeegees. A lot of people like using hard cards or different other type of turbos. I like this because of the comfortability in my hand and then also how much pressure I can put on it. So I'll wrap it around the edge of my squeegee. And then I'm going to go straight in to the edge I just sealed. The reason for this is to soak that water out. It's beyond, and also beyond soak that water, I'm also getting the pressure on this top edge. I'm really making sure I have this entire top edge completely sealed out before I address anything else. Because if you just let it sit with water up there, again, like I said, to begin with, you spray water up there, it's got to come down. You push water up there, it's got to come down. Let's dry as much water as possible because we don't want that slowly leaching into our window and then putting contaminant in our window. So now that I have the window set on the top, it is still moving a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the rest of my window. So what I'll do is I'll go from side to side, not going to my top, but let me just get a little bit further down. Go to my left, go to my right, and then I'm going to go straight down my center. What this is going to create is uppercase T. Seal your top, seal down the middle. And then from there, this squeegee technique for me is going to allow me to squeegee out my window in a very methodical way to where I know I'm putting even pressure on both sides of the window. So when I'm squeegeeing out, I'm not just slicing into one corner. I could potentially end up putting a finger or putting undue stress into the film to where it's going to cause something to pop up. Because if anything pops up while you're installing, you run the risk again of pulling contamination into your window. You always want even tension on your window. So since this side right here, I went ahead and put my factory side on, I can go straight into that side. Now on this side, the one thing you got to avoid is squeegeeing in too far. I will take this far enough to where I know this film isn't going to pop back like that. Commercial windows, you can kind of get away with it. Any other type of window, what ends up happening, and it can still happen on a commercial window, is if there is any kind of contamination, say it's deep in that seal, it's somewhere where we can't clean, if you pull back up on this, now you're just sucking the water out of that edge that's rolling down the edge and it's pulling into the window. You'll either have like a dirt line or a lift line, and you'll have to pull your film up and rinse that out and try to get it out, or you're scrapping your piece and you're doing it all over again. So don't take it out. Don't take it into the side too far. What we're doing right now is, yes, we are trying to get as much water out as possible, but also we are trying to squeegee enough to where we know our window is tacked up, and we can then make our final 2 cuts, and then we'll go through with one final squeegee to actually make sure that we have as much moisture as we humanly possibly can get out of this window, and then we'll dry out our edges and we'll tuck our seals back in. So now with that, give it a gentle little touch and push. You can tell if it is tacked up or not. This thing is tacked up. It's not going nowhere. So now, with how I have this squeegee, you can tell I don't have it too far pushed in anywhere, even on the bottom. I'm going to go down to my corner right here. For me, when I cut corners, I want to make sure I can pull and have nice even tension all the way through. So I'm pulling into this corner. We are going to want to take about a 1/4 inch up the side. I will put my blade, and I'll double check it too to make sure I'm getting it exactly where I want. I'm going to put my blade there, and then I'm going to pull up to where my blade goes through, and then as my tint's away, I'm going to finish my cut down. Then I'm going to take that tint and rip it away. Okay, so after taking that 1/4 inch out, what you're going to do is you start feeding it in, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly if you cut it enough. I can tell right now I did not cut it enough, so I'm going to pull it out a little bit, and then I'm going to slice off like, about a 1/16 or an 1/8 more, and then same process, same thing. Didn't do enough. Cut a little bit more. You always want to be on the side of caution of how far up you cut. If you cut too far up and you push your corner, and you can end up with a gap in the corner, and obviously that is not acceptable. You're going to have to pull off the film and redo the window again. There we go. All right, I think that should be a winner. Yep, there we go. All right, so by cutting that corner out, what it creates is it takes all that excess material right there to where then I can feed my edges into the window itself and not put a crease in this bottom corner. A lot of people, what they end up doing is they won't necessarily cut anything out, and they'll just feed their finger straight into that corner, which if you do put a right amount of tension on it and you get everything to fold in the correct way, you can get away with something like that, but you have a much higher probability of creasing your film if you do not cut your corner out. Highly recommend cutting your corner out. Anything where the seal or the window itself and where the outside frame is any further back than, I would say, a 1/4 inch. Anything back further than 1/4 inch, and then how much you cut out is just going to depend on how big of a drop you have on your seal. So now that I have my corner cut out, I like putting a little water on the film because I want my finger to be able to slide while I'm cutting down. Other thing you got to watch out for is make sure your tint isn't stuck to the frame itself. All right, so now I'm going to sink my blade into the top. I'm going to use the side frame to pretty much just guide my blade straight down. Don't need to put a heavy amount of pressure. Another little tip, when you're pulling your film away, sometimes your corner of your blade won't necessarily get through the edge on the top or get all the way through on the bottom. When you're pulling that film away, make sure you hold your finger on your film, because I've done it numerous times, unfortunately, in my career where I went to pull the film off because I'm just trying to move quickly and it's not cut all the way through, and I accidentally pull inward and then it rips into my film. So now that I got my side cut, I'll go ahead and cut my bottom. Same thing. Just going to use the frame itself, following all the way across, get a nice straight cut. Okay, now that we got all that cut, Going to re-wet my window. Now I'm going to go through that squeegee pattern one more time, but I'm going to complete it all the way through from top to bottom. So I'll start with my top, to the top of my tee, go straight down the center, and then go from side to side. Now, an important thing while squeegeeing is making sure you're applying enough pressure. One thing I tend to see a lot of people when they first get into installing is they'll squeegee out the window and you won't see any kind of big pockets, but the window will still look wavy. It's because they didn't put enough pressure on the window or the squeegee pattern was not good enough. When it comes down to when you're squeegeeing on the window, so when I'm going across, I'm dropping my squeegee halfway through what I already just squeegeed. So now this top part of my squeegee is going to squeegee through the area I just did, and then I'll hit the new area. Effectively, I'm squeegeeing my window twice. So I'm working more efficiently instead of having to try to speed through squeegee my entire window, re-wet it, and then do it all over again. And who knows what I missed because I wasn't really methodical with how I squeegee my window out. And when it comes down to it, I am leaning my body into this window. Moisture does dry, obviously within the first 30 to 90 days. That is the manufacturer's set amount of time for a window to dry out. But if you take your time and squeeze your window properly, you're going to give your customer nothing to worry about when it comes to seeing their window because they don't necessarily see tint done every day when it comes down to it. So if you see moisture pockets running through a window and there's a bunch of little ones all over the place, that's going to cause panic. And it's undue panic if you just squeegee your window properly. All right, so now that I'm done doing my main squeegee, I'm now going to go through squeegee and paper towel again. And I'm just going straight into my edge. I'm just going to go down. I'll probably do about 4 or 5 pushes in, and then I'm going to move it to a dry spot on my towel. What we're doing now is we're reaching into the back side of this frame where the film is kind of cut to, and pushing, getting a nice clean seal on the film, but also drying out any excess water that's on that backside. And then I'll go straight in all the way around. For me, it's my belief, I don't necessarily slice many edges. I do sometimes, it really just depends. But on this first initial push through, I'm gonna go straight into my edge, just like this. Because again, when you're slicing a squeegee, depending if you hit a dry spot or if something's just tension-wise isn't set good, the film can easily shoot what we call like a finger into the window, and then you squeegee over the top of it. Now you have a crease in your window, and now you're redoing your window again. So I'll go straight into the side, make sure everything's dry. And then typically that's when I'll turn my squeegee around where I have my point. And this is where I will do a slice, but I'll go from the middle out. Always make sure you have a dry squeegee, or should I say dry paper towel on your squeegee, because any bit of moisture can cause to where you'll lose the friction of it sliding across the film, and then you have potential to crease your film. Okay. So now that we have the film completely installed, all of our edges dried out, what we're going to do now is we're going to put our rubber seals back in the window, and that is going to create a install where you can't see where the film is because it's all behind the rubber itself. So we don't have any gaps around our entire window. It looks like a factory window. As close as we can possibly get to a factory window is when we put the seals back in, you don't see no gaps at all. So typically what we'll do, microfiber, wipe the rubber down. Most of the time when these rubbers go in, it's during construction. They're filled with dust and grime. There's no reason to have that pushing up against your film at any point. So when putting rubbers in, I'm going to start with the bottom one. I'm going to plant my one corner in, and then I go to my other corner, I'm going to put that in. And then I'm going to go right into the middle, push that in, and then do the same thing. Split the next 2 sections in half, push that in. Split the next section in half, split it. I'm going to do that a couple times, just so I know it's grabbed in there. And then, because one of the reasons why a lot of people will not pull rubbers is they put them back in can be time consuming. But if you have the proper tools, it is absolutely not time consuming. You insert the rubber like that, you take your roller, and then you just roll it in. And it just rolls right in. A lot of people will sit there and say, well, I can just trim the rubber off and then it just tint and I'll be good to go. But the problem with that is those rubbers are going to hold a bunch of water. And then also you're trimming down rubbers that are using pressure to keep this glass in place. So now I'll grab my side rubber. Wipe that down. Same thing. Start with the top, go down to the bottom. Go ahead and grab my other one at the same time. Another thing I've learned through the years of installing, especially when we started pulling rubbers, because we didn't always used to pull rubbers. We were in the same boat. We thought, just trim those off until, you don't know what you don't know when it comes down to it. We ended up finding out eventually that, oh, you can pull those out. And then as soon as we were like, oh, you can pull those out, it makes the install that much more cleaner. And when it gets down to it, when you have the correct tools and you have the right systems in place, it's that much more efficient too. But the one thing you want to avoid doing, and I've been told this by numerous glass companies, is those rubbers are cut to a size that's for that window. So when you put these in, it's very important to start the exact same way that I'm showing, is put the corners in. Because you can tell after I put these in, it's like, that's too big for that window. Those are meant to be cut like that. And then you have to, when you put them in, you split it like that so you can get it to lay in there. And then it puts the proper tension on the window to hold it in place the way the window glazers want it to be. That's another important part of having that roller, is that you're able to pinch this in, split those big sections that are kind of popping out, make sure it's clamped in there, and then you take your roller. And then as you're rolling, just watch the rubber, because sometimes it'll slide. So you're just going to go through certain sections, just roll it straight in. All right, now I got my rubbers all completely rolled in. After that, just wipe your window down. Kind of do one more final inspection. What you're looking for is maybe you did accidentally miss some moisture or anything like that. Wipe down your frames. And that is from start to finish an installation on a typical commercial window when it comes down to it. From prepping the window, pulling the seals, down to the end of putting the seals back, wiping down the windows, how to install a commercial window. Thank you for following along.